All right, folks, Yishai Fleischer here. The big news out of Israel is the discussion of sovereignty. Will Israel use October the 7th, which was a horrible attack against the Jewish state? Will we use it as a fulcrum to move forward in annexation, normalization of Judea and Samaria, the so-called West Bank, to make it part of Israel, right? There are these large Arab areas, these large Arab cities that exist within the so-called West Bank. We call it Judea and Samaria, of course. The West Bank is a term that tries to erase the Jewish connection to this land. People like myself have been resettling the land of Israel. We are called settlers, but we really are resettlers, or in Hebrew, inheritors of the land of Israel. We've been pushing very hard to normalize Judea and Samaria and make it part of normative Israel. However, there's a lot of Arabs in these areas, maybe 2 million Arabs that live in Judea and Samaria, maybe 2 million Arabs that live in Gaza. In any case, with the world threatening, many countries threatening to recognize a so-called Palestine on our land in this coming UN session, the ministers, especially led by Minister Bezalel Smotrich, you've heard his name a lot, are leading the charge towards recognition of Judea and Samaria as part of Israel, assertion of sovereignty. They have a plan. Let's read an article first about how Netanyahu is actually not going to be bringing it up in the next session of ministers. Right? Netanyahu drops the so-called, look at this, the word West Bank is used so flippantly. Netanyahu drops West Bank sovereignty issue from agenda after UAE, the United Arab Emirates, calls the plan a red line. Okay, so the discussion is going to focus on the security situation in Judea and Samaria in light of the upcoming UN General Assembly, which wants to allow several countries to recognize Palestinian statehood, so-called Palestinian statehood. What's that going to cause? Well, it might cause an uprising if at the UN they're recognizing a different sovereign in this land, and yet on the ground it's not like that at all. So let's take a look at this article, and then we're going to go translate Bezalel Smotrich. The article says the issue of applying sovereignty to the West Bank has been removed from the agenda of the discussion to be convened on Thursday by Prime Minister Netanyahu, following the United Arab Emirates calling to the move a red line. So the first thing I have to say here, and just stop kind of for a second and consider that this Abraham Accords was supposed to be a good thing for us and not a fulcrum to use against Israel. It's not like, oh, we have the Abraham Accords, and now that we have the Abraham Accords, we don't want you to assert sovereignty in your land. The idea of the Abraham Accords is that they recognize us to be a sovereign state, and they're going to work together. But this threatening of burning down the Abraham Accords, I mean, from my perspective, okay, you know what I mean? Drop the Abraham Accords if you're going to tell us, if we're going to listen to you and you're going to tell us how to run our land. Of course, if we were talking in the Middle East fashion, we just say whatever and just keep going and just, call their bluff. That's the real way to do it. The real way to do it is not even to pull out of the Abraham Accords or anything like that. It's just to say you're bluffing because you need us much more than we need you. So you could just, you're not going to tell me what to do. That's the real way to talk to the Middle East. Sadly, in this case, Netanyahu has pulled this issue. Instead, they're going to talk about the tension that the defense establishment, the Shabak and the army and the intelligence are going to say that these defense folks are going to warn ministers that the so-called West Bank can erupt instantly. And this is the classic scare tactics that we're told, that if we allow prayer in Jerusalem, the Middle East will explode. And if you hold on to the Hermon, the Middle East will explode. And if you recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, the Middle East will explode. It's a mantra of the folks that want to keep the status quo for whatever reason. The IDF and the defense establishment are attributing the warning to the dire economic situation in the West Bank, so-called West Bank, which is at low point, as well as the political uncertainty surrounding the region. So this is another way that the defense establishment wants to force us to kind of allow pro-jihad workers to work in our communities by telling us if we don't pay them off, they're going to flip out. It sounds like a shakedown to me. It sounds like a protection racket. Like if you don't pay these guys and help them work, they're going to explode. That is not a way to work with people. I'm always jealous when I'm in America and I see that the people who are building buildings are actually just good pro-American people, or anywhere around the world it's like that. You don't want to have builders who hate your country that you have to pay off, or else they'll get violent. Okay. On the issue that we're talking about today is that Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich said that Israel should, not just said, he held the press conference and explained that Israel should annex 82% of Judea and Samaria, and the rest to leave as a kind of emirate, as a kind of non-annexed area. Okay. However, the Emiratis are threatening, as I said before, that the Abraham Accords is going down the toilet should Israel annex its ancestral homeland. Well, what kind of friends are them, right? What kind of friends are these? Again, I say, on the one hand, it's disgusting. On the other hand, you have to also know how to deal with our fellow Middle Easterners. You just say, just don't say anything. Just keep going and don't pay attention to them, and they will accept the reality that Israel is here to stay. Okay, let's watch a video. Let's watch Bezalel Smotrich as he explains his rationale for laying out this plan for 82% annexation of Judea and Samaria to Israel. And this is the big news that everybody is excited about. Let's watch it. And here's actually a chance to meet Bezalel Smotrich, because Anglo folks don't get a lot of chance to meet him because he doesn't speak in English very well, and he's not doing international media a lot. So people just besmirch him. Here's your chance to actually hear him for yourself. Okay, Israel's got a lot of different political tensions and things that we disagree about. There's a lot of disagreements in the political discourse. However, there are two things that there's a large consensus on, both in the Knesset and in the nation itself.
הראשון הוא התנגדות מוחלטת למדינת טרור בליבה של הארץ, מה שמכונה במכבסה הידועה מדינה פלסטינית.
So he says one thing that there's a consensus on is the idea that we're not going to allow a so-called Palestinian state in our land. People understand that that's going to be a terror state. October the 7th has already taught them, I'm adding, October the 7th has taught them that that is not a good solution for our security thinking. Sorry, here he is. He's talking about the 7th of October. He says very few people after the 7th of October very few Israelis think that we should grow Gaza by 20-fold in Judea and Samaria. He says it's the exact same situation, and therefore most Israelis do not think it's a good idea to copy and paste that idea, make it much bigger in Judea and Samaria. It'll endanger the whole country. And of course, this area, and he says this very quickly, Judea and Samaria are the areas that sit atop, geographically speaking, all of the big centers of our Israeli population. You create another Gaza there, it'll endanger Israel and the great, the big centers of population. Right, so Abba Eban called these small borders of Israel, the indefensible borders, he called them the Auschwitz borders.
ידידנו הגדול בבית הלבן, הנשיא דונלד טראמפ, המחיש זאת היטב בדרכו הישירה כל כך, כשהצביע על קצה העץ שלו, אם אתם זוכרים, במרכז השולחן, כדי להמחיש עד כמה מדינת ישראל היא נקודה קטנה על המפה.
He says that, Smotrich says that Trump, in his wisdom, pointed to like the edge of his pen and said, that's the size of Israel. And he's very wisely understands that Israel is a very small place that cannot endanger its security.
קטנה מדי ובעלת עומק אסטרטגי קטן מכדי להגן על עצמה.
Too small and too small in terms of strategic defense.
הן מפני איומי פלישה וכיבוש והן מפני איומי טילים קצרי וארוכי טווח.
So this is the danger that we face is both an all-out, ground assault onto small Israel, and also the missile threats that we face, and then we need more kind of space to be able to, I'm adding, to lay out the rocket systems and and we need more kind of spread outness. Bottom line is that we face different kinds of danger, just from terror, from ground assault, and from the racketeering.
להקטין אותה עוד יותר, זה פשוט לא בא בחשבון.
To shrink it even more, this land, it doesn't make any sense. It can't shrink the land of Israel.
החלטת הכנסת לפני למעלה משנה, שהתקבלה ברוב אדיר ושללה הקמת מדינה פלסטינית, מעידה.
The Knesset, about a year ago, voted in an overwhelming vote to reject the idea of a Palestinian state, and this is testimony to
שההתנגדות לאיום הקיומי הזה חוצת מחנות ומגזרים.
That feelings against such a state, such a country in the middle of our heartland, the opposition to it crosses political lines. It's not just on the right, but rather the majority of Knesset members, Jewish Knesset members, are against the idea of a Palestinian state in the land of Israel.
הקונצנזוס השני, ריבונות.
Now, the second thing that there is a broad consensus on is the question of sovereignty in the land of Israel over parts of the West Bank, so-called West Bank. We call it Judea and Samaria. So he says the majority of people believe that Israel should be sovereign in these places.
71 תומכים מול בסך הכל 5 מתנגדים.
In a Knesset vote, it was 71-5. 71 Knesset members, which is bigger than the coalition, voted in favor of the general idea of sovereignty in the land of Israel, as opposed to 5 who voted against.
מקרב חברי הכנסת היהודים שהתנגדו להחלטה ההיסטורית על החלת הריבונות הישראלית על שטחי המולדת ביהודה ושומרון, קואליציה ואופוזיציה. אתם זוכרים שיאיר לפיד
He says that, in short, a coalition and opposition, both voted for recognizing sovereignty, asserting sovereignty in Judea and Samaria.
חבריו לא רצו להצביע בעד, הם ברחו מהמליאה.
He mentions that Lapid and his friends didn't want to vote in favor of sovereignty, but also didn't want to vote against it, so they left the they left the parliament, the voting room, the plenum, in order to avert being shamed or voting against sovereignty or voting for sovereignty. So they kind of ran away, and he's making fun of them.
5 חברי כנסת בלבד הצביעו נגד החלטה על ריבונות מלאה ביהודה ושומרון.
Only 5 Knesset members voted against full assertion of sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. I just want to take a parenthesis here and say the reason that I'm playing you this conference, first I want you to see who Bezalel Smotrich is, his body language, his intellect. He's a very sharp dude. And the other thing is he makes very logical arguments. Like Israelis want this. They understand that they don't want a Palestinian terror state in the heart of Judea and Samaria on our land, and also it endangers us. So here he is, he's laying out the case.
הקונצנזוס הרחב בעד הריבונות הוא תוצר ישיר של ההבנה עמוקה שלעולם לא נוכל להסכים לאיום קיומי להתבסס בתוכנו.
The broad understanding of the Israelis that we have to be sovereign comes from the realization that we can never give away this land and create a danger state within Israel. There is now today a broad understanding of that. And I think he's saying that that's a big change that has been brought about by the 7th of October.
ושאחרי עשרות שנים של גמגום, הגיעה העת לומר זאת בבירור.
There has been tens of years of unclear speech, of hiccups, hesitations, and stuttering. Now it's time to say it with clarity.
ולפעול בהתאם.
And to work in that direction. To say in clarity, we want sovereignty, and to work to that end.
הגיעה העת להחיל את הריבונות הישראלית ביהודה ושומרון, להוריד מן הפרק אחת ולתמיד את רעיון חלוקת הארץ הקטנטנה שלנו.
It's time to assert sovereignty and to get rid of once and for all the idea of cutting up our small land.
הקמת מדינת טרור במרכזה. בבוקרו של 7 לאוקטובר ובמלחמת הקיום שאנו מנהלים מאז בהצלחה, הבטחנו לעצמנו שלעולם לא עוד.
Right, so we promised ourselves after the 7th of October, never again. That's it. We're not going to do stupid things like that again by giving away our land. It's time to think differently, says Bezalel Smotrich.
לא ניתן לטבח הנורא הזה להתרחש שוב, לא כנגד יישובי העוטף, לא אל מול תושבי הצפון, ולא נגד ערי ויישובי המרכז. השרון וקו התפר.
We're not going to let another massacre like that happen to the cities of Israel. And then he listed the various cities that really border Judea and Samaria, which are central cities of Israel.
לא ניתן חלילה להפוך את כפר סבא לכפר עזה, את נתניה לבארי.
Right, so Kfar Sava is not going to be Kfar Aza, meaning to say we're not going to allow these big cities to be terrorized as the Gaza envelope communities were for so long.
ואת ניצני עוז לנחל עוז. מעבר לזכותנו התנ"כית, ההיסטורית והמוסרית על כלל שטחי ארצנו.
We have a biblical, historical, and moral right to this land, but above that,
תפקידה המדיני והביטחוני של הריבונות הוא להבטיח שלא תקום מדינת טרור ערבית בלב ארצנו.
The other aspect of our rights to this land is that we also have to think defensively. And you see that he's dancing between these two issues. On the one hand, our inalienable right, and on the other hand, the security needs, both dovetail and reach the same conclusion, which is we have to hold on to this land.
לכן, וזו הנקודה המרכזית, מפת הריבונות מוכרחת להבטיח שלא תקום מדינת טרור ערבית לצידנו.
So he says, again, the duality, he's saying that the map of the sovereignty has to ensure that there's not going to be an Arab terror state in our midst. So you see, we're juggling two issues here, both our rights, our historic rights, and the issue of making sure that Israel is not going to be annihilated through the creation of another Gaza nearby, next door.
עליה למנוע את הקמת המדינה הפלסטינית, ולא חלילה לאפשר את הקמתה בבחינת מכלל הן, אתה שומע עליו. ולכן לא גושי התיישבות, לא שטחי C.
All right, so now he's saying the way to do this is not through minimizing the Israeli communities. It's not through Area C, where you're allowed to live. It's not through recognition of the settlement blocks. The opposite. The territorial contiguity is what is needed for Israel's security, and it's more like recognition of their blocks and put them into blocks as opposed to putting us into blocks. We should be the sovereigns.
לא ריבונות חלקית. כל אלה משאירים את שאר השטח לאויב.
Any partial assertion of sovereignty leaves the area to be controlled by the enemy.
עדיין מאפשרים לו להקים חלילה מדינה שתהיה רחבה יותר ממדינת ישראל ותשאיר אותנו בגבולות אושוויץ. תראו על המפה איך זה נראה כאן מאחוריכם. תראו כמה רחבה המדינה הערבית ה-23 שיש מי...
If God forbid an Arab state will arise, it'll be in many, like in some ways, I don't see the map that he's showing, but he says it's going to be wider than the state of Israel, more maybe he means contiguity between Gaza, the Hebron Hills, and Jordan, for example. That would be a great and dangerous tragedy for Israel. He says we've got to stop that. So you see that he's got two tracks, right? One is the rights track and one is the defense track. But again, they both lead to the same place.
שרוצים להקים כאן וכמה צרים המותניים של מדינת היהודים האחת היחידה בעולם.
And how the waist of Israel is thin and really not defensible, and you can't allow this entity to arise. It endangers the Jewish state. We got to make sure that doesn't happen.
זהו עקרון יסוד הכרחי בכל החלת ריבונות. ריבונות ישראל ביהודה ושומרון תמנע מדינת טרור ערבית ולא תקים מדינה כזו חלילה. עיקרון שני, אנחנו לא רוצים לעזור לאויבים שלנו ולא רוצים לנהל את חייהם. האוכלוסייה הערבית ביהודה ושומרון תומכת בחמאס ובהשמדה.
Okay, so here comes the really controversial part. If you thought the first part was controversial, here's the second part. He says, okay, here's my second part. And that is that I'm looking at, you could see the map right behind them. He's like, we don't want to control all these Arabs. And they actually are in these 6 regions in Judea and Samaria. And we don't want to rule over them. Now, I don't like that language. I personally think that we should say, yes, we're willing to govern peoples within our borders and we're willing to take responsibility for them. I prefer that kind of language. But okay, he's saying, all right, the way we're going to get around the fact that we have this large Arab population is that we're not going to rule them. They're going to have some kind of autonomy, some kind of emirate status, some kind of self-governance, but they're the ones that are going to be in settlement blocks, not us.
מדעת מדינת ישראל, סקרים מלמדים על תמיכה רחבה מאוד בקרב ערביי יהודה ושומרון בזוועות השביעי לאוקטובר. ספרי הלימוד שלהם כוללים תמיכה בטרור.
He says the Palestinians, so-called, the Arab population of Judea and Samaria that call themselves Palestinians, he says we see studies show and polls show as well that they overwhelmingly support the 7th of October and that they're overwhelmingly pro-Hamas.
בשאיפה להשמדתה של מדינת ישראל.
And they have the yearning for the destruction of the state of Israel.
לנו רצון להחיל את ריבונותנו על אוכלוסייה שמעוניינת בהשמדתנו.
We don't want to assert our sovereignty over a population that is interested in our destruction. I personally would disagree with that way of talking because what that means is if you're able to stick in your a population that's against this, whatever state it is, in this case Israel, then you're able to take it over because the state no longer wants to take sovereignty. I say I take sovereignty over the land, and the population has to be law-abiding, and I've got to make sure that happens. So I don't like that language, but I understand what he's coming from. He wants to move it forward so it actually happens.
באויבים צריך להילחם ולא לאפשר להם חיים נינוחים. ולכן
okay, we have to fight enemies and not give them a comfortable life. That's not the job of the Jewish state. It's to fight the enemies and not to coddle them.
עקרון העל להחלת הריבונות, ותכניסו את זה טוב טוב לראש. זו הסיסמה. מקסימום שטח על מינימום אוכלוסייה.
Okay, so he says, here is my formula, and understand it well, for sovereignty: maximum amount of land with minimum amount of population, that is Arab so-called Palestinian population. So that's, he says the most amount of sovereignty over the least amount of foreigners to this Jewish state.
כך גם לשמור על רוב יהודי מבהק במדינת ישראל יהודית ודמוקרטית.
That's how we maintain a majority of Jews and continue to have a Jewish and democratic state through this type of gerrymandering. I understand what he's saying. I don't love it, but maybe he's speaking towards the left side of the map and is giving them the kind of language that they like to hear or are used to hearing.
בחודשים האחרונים עמלנו במנהלת ההתיישבות במשרד הביטחון יחד עם ראשי הרשויות על שרטוט מפות הריבונות בהתאם לעקרון העל הזה. והריבונות
I've been drawing up together with the heads of towns, with mayors of towns, and you see right behind him to the right is Mayor Israel Gantz from the Binyamin Regional Council. He's like, we've been working hard on these maps for a long time now.
הישראלית תוכל בעזרת השם על כ-82% מהשטח.
So according to his plan, Israel will be able to be sovereign over 82% of the land of Judea and Samaria.
ערביי יהודה ושומרון ימשיכו לנהל את חייהם בעצמם בשלב המיידי באותה הדרך שבה הדבר מבוצע היום באמצעות
The majority of Arabs will be able to live their lives the way they're living it right now, under their own auspices.
הרשות הפלסטינית ובהמשך באמצעות חלופות ניהול אזרחיות אזוריות שנידרש להקים ללא קולקטיב שישמר שאיפה לאומית להשמדת שאיפתנו הלאומית שלנו.
He goes, for now, maybe the Palestinian Authority can keep going, but we have to establish other systems, other processes, that other governances or governing bodies that will be able to govern these Arabs, but not have an internal will to destroy Israel. So we're going to help create these governing bodies, but they're not going to be the classic jihadist governing bodies. Will not allow that to happen anymore. And that's exactly what happened under Oslo, right? Like, we wanted to come up with different governing bodies, and the ones we came up with in the end were quite jihadist and anti-Israel, so that didn't work out.
הוועידה האסלאמו-צרפתית שתתקיים לקראת סוף החודש באו"ם.
The Franco-Islamic gathering that's going to be happening at the UN. It's a French and Arab working together to destroy Israel, but I like he calls it the Franco-Arab Summit at the UN next month.
שלב חדש בניסיונותיה של הרשות הפלסטינית לפגוע במדינת ישראל. זו איננה הפעם הראשונה. ארגון הטרור הזה פועל כנגד מדינת ישראל במשך עשרות שנים. הם מעודדים טרור, מממנים טרור.
The PA backs terror and funds terror. And that's what's happening at the UN. They're meeting with an anti-Israel. They're having an anti-Israel meeting of these anti-Israel forces that want to destroy Israel and pay for terrorism.
הם עומדים מאחורי חרמות נגד מדינת ישראל וכלכלתה. הם עומדים מאחורי ההליכים המשפטיים המושחתים.
The Franco-Arabist alliance is behind the BDS movement. And I think what he's talking about really is the Progressive Jihad Alliance, right? Progressive and Jihad together. So he's saying this Progressive Jihad Alliance, they're behind the BDS. They're behind the lawfare. They're behind the media campaigns to besmirch Israel. And so this gathering is nothing but a continuation of that anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish hate.
שמנוהלים נגדנו בבית הדין האנטישמי בהאג. הם עומדים מאחורי צווי המעצר השערורייתיים.
They're also behind the ICC's arrest warrants that are outrageous.
שהוצאו נגד ראש הממשלה ושר הביטחון לשעבר.
It's outrageous that they have arrest warrants against the prime minister and the previous defense minister.
מאחורי סנקציות שהוטלו על נבחרי הציבור שלנו.
And they're behind the sanctions against some of Israel's leaders and civilian population, the so-called settlers in the so-called West Bank, i.e. Jews returning to the land of Israel and living in the Heartland.
החלת הריבונות ביהודה ושומרון היא צעד מנע נגד המתקפה המדינית
So now he's going to a third point, right? He's like, it's our land. We need it for defense. And now he says, this is a defensive strike, a preventative strike, preemptive strike against that meeting that wants to recognize a Palestinian state. In our land, this is a preventative measure.
מתוכננת נגדנו ונגד הניסיונות לסכן את קיומנו ואת עתיד ילדינו. הגמגום הישראלי הוא הדלק למתקפה המדינית הזו. והדרך היחידה...
Israeli Jewish stuttering, or what I would call Jewish weakness, is the fuel for these projects, for these anti-Israel projects, and for this upcoming meeting. You know, I've said this all the time, and here's a Minister of Israel, Minister of Treasury, Bezalel Smotrich, saying it as well, Minister of the Treasury. He says, you know, Jewish weakness and Israeli stuttering and Israeli saying, maybe we'll have a two-state solution, maybe we'll split Jerusalem, maybe we'll give you our heartland. This is what has given fuel to the enemies of Israel, and we have to stop that now. And I think that's true. The way to stop this attack is to stop stuttering and to say things with clarity. Judea and Samaria is not actually a land in conflict, and it's not controversial at all. It is the inheritance of our forefathers, and I'll add mothers, from generations back. Okay, so it's our land because it's our inheritance. We're the indigenous folks, and we talk about in other places the 5 loci of rights of Jewish people to the land of Israel. But he says it's our land, and this is not actually something that is very controversial. And never shall an Arab state arise in our land. I would say never shall arise again, because it rose up in Gaza, it partially rose up in Judea and Samaria, and it rose up in Jordan. Don't forget that in 1922, it was actually Winston Churchill who cut out from the mandate for the land of Israel a big chunk of land and gave it to their friends, the Hashemites, because the Hashemites were in trouble. They wanted to reward them. And so a huge chunk of land was taken away and an Arab state was established there. So I would say that, Bezalel, I get what you're saying, but, we have to roll back some of the evil that has been done in previous generations. That was Bezalel Smotrich. He said a lot here, but I also want to add just one more thing that he said yesterday when he was challenged by Amit Segal at an event here in Hebron and about the cost of the sovereignty movement. He's like, how much is it going to cost to deal with all these people? How much is it going to cost for Israel to be sovereign in this land? And he says it's exactly the opposite. Number one is that the cost is making all these defense mistakes. He's like, this war, the October 7th war, may have cost, and this is the first time I'm hearing that figure, 300 billion shekel, like $100 billion to the Israeli economy. So that's a lot. And he's like, if we don't do mistakes like this, we won't have to pay for that. He says, moreover, when we control this land, we're going to have a big boom, a big economic boom in these areas. And that's actually going to bring prosperity to the region, to Jews and Arabs and everybody who's part of the Abraham Accords. It's a blessing. And so he says it's actually the financially correct thing to do. Hold on to this land, assert sovereignty, develop it, and there'll be a great and bright future. I want to say that I'm very disappointed in the UAE, and I wish they would just shut up and stay out of our business. We know what to do with our land, and we wouldn't tell you what to do with your land. So butt out, and don't give us this Arab crap anymore, because we didn't join the Abraham Accords for you to tell us not to live in our ancestral homeland. This is really the second time that the UAE has caused a problem for us to assert sovereignty. Right in the very beginning, it was like either sovereignty or the Abraham Accords, and we chose Abraham Accords. I said back then, I say now, there should be no distance between those two things. You want to be our friends? You want to be part of prosperity for this region? Good. We'll live in our homeland, in our tiny land, and there'll be prosperity and blessings for the region. You try to fight us for this land, well, there'll be endless conflict. We'll fight the jihad, and it'll subdue the region's growth for a long time. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed Bezalel Smotrich. He's a very interesting fella. And he's considered very competent, and not always liked, but definitely very competent. That's for sure. Moreover, he is one of the people leading the charge, and he is oftentimes besmirched, put together as like Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, far-right ministers, blah, 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 blah. These are people voted on by the Jewish people. I don't think they're extreme. I think they make a lot of sense, and I think that it's important to listen to them. They do represent a lot of the Israeli population that is indeed shifted much more to the nationalist and to the right since October the 7th. We need a new reality. We're not giving away this land. It doesn't make sense. It's just dumb. We can't do dumb moves anymore. It costs lives. It costs billions of dollars and shekels as well. God bless you folks wherever you are. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, become a member, and even check out our web store. That you could all do at our YouTube page, which is Yishai Fleischer TV, and through our other channels on Instagram, on Facebook, on X, and even on LinkedIn. So join us there. Don't forget, buymeacoffee.com/Yishai. It's a great way to support our shows. We appreciate it so much. And also, if you love our projects, our beautification projects and strengthening the land of Israel, like biblicalhighway.com, you can learn more about that and support that at fightforisrael.org. Fight, the number 4, Israel.org. I am sending you blessings from the bigger land of blessings, Judea and Samaria, heading towards sovereignty, heading towards being part and parcel of the Jewish state. God bless you from Hebron, from the land of Israel, wherever you are. Lots of love and shalom.